that shine like beacons in the night. The patriots whose vision gave us meaning, who kept the lamp of freedom burning bright. In the long and honored history of America, there are those who paid the last and final price, who were called upon by chance or
The Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Michael R. Pence, has arrived and is being greeted by the Honorable Patrick M. Shanahan, Acting Secretary of Defense, General Joseph F. Dunford Jr., Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Ms. Karen Durham, Executive Director, Army National Cemeteries Programs, and Major General Michael L. Howard, Commanding General of the United States Army, Military District of Washington.
Present!
Present!
Oh! tired, but I can't come home till the last shot's fired. In June of 1944, I waded in the blood on Omaha's shore. 21 and scared to death, my heart pounding in my chest. I almost made the first seawall when my friends turned and saw me fall. I still smell the smoke, I can taste the mud as I lie there dying from the loss of blood. Say a prayer for peace for our daughters and our sons. Set our spirit free. Let us lay down our guns. Sweet Mother Mary, we're so tired, but we can't come home till the last shot's fired. I'm in the fields of Vietnam, the mountains of Afghanistan, and I'm still hoping, waiting, praying I did not die in vain. Say a prayer for peace, for our daughters and our sons. Set our spirits free, set us free. Let us lay down our guns. Sweet Mother Mary, we're so tired, but we can't come home. No, we can't come home till the last shot's fired.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the invocation and the national anthem. General Joseph F. Dunford, Jr., Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The Honorable Patrick M. Shanahan, the Acting Secretary of Defense. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Michael R. Pence, Vice President of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, Chaplain J. Johns, Command Chaplain, Joint Force Headquarters, National Capital Region, and the United States Army, Military District of Washington.
Please join me in prayer. Eternal God, Lord of time and eternity, Lord of the living and of the dead, you have made yourself known to us not only through your wondrous works of creation, but also in your mighty deeds throughout the history of our nation. From the start of the American journey to the present hour, you have sustained us through days of adversity and prosperity, through times of war and peace. You have proven yourself strong to save us. Among all nations of the earth, America has been uniquely and remarkably blessed. Today we remember with highest esteem and devoted respect our fellow citizens who have fought and died in America's wars as members of her armed forces. Many of these gallant Americans died before the guns of our enemies. Many of them died alone. All of them served for the sake of future generations of Americans whom they themselves would never know. Most of these patriots are now long dead, but time will dim neither the glory of their deeds nor the sting of their loss. Comfort those who yet grieve their absence. Enable us to embrace fully the legacy of valor, duty, and sacrifice that these heroes quietly built. As their lives caused our flag to fly high and with honor, so may ours. Empower us to take up the light of liberty for which they have given all, so that, on our watch, it may remain undimmed. This is our fervent hope and our solemn prayer. Amen.
Please remain standing for the United States Coast Guard Band and vocalist, musician first class, Megan Weiklingen, and singing our national anthem.
Stripes and bright stars through the
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, General Dunford, Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff.
Mr. Vice President, Secretary Shanahan, distinguished guests, and most importantly, to the Gold Star families who are here, it's an honor to join you in solemn remembrance and reflection. Today's generation of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen are proudly following the footsteps of an unending line of Americans who have answered the call to duty. As we pause to remember the fallen, please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. A great leader of the British Empire once said, "Show me the manner in which a nation or a community cares for its dead, and I will measure exactly the sympathies of its people, their respect for their land, and their loyalty to high ideals." We're here today in the spirit of those words, to honor those who gave the last full measure of devotion and service to our nation, to reflect on the values and high ideals for which we stand, and to remember that what we have in our country is worth fighting for. The story of those remembered today is one of extraordinary sacrifice. It's a story of lives cut short, of hopes and dreams never realized. It's also a story of sacrifice for the families left behind, the anguish of parents, spouses, children, siblings, and friends, the sadness of the empty seat at the family table. But the story of those remembered today is also one of men and women who stood for something larger than themselves. It's about men and women who embodied the most important values and traditions of our nation. And it's about men and women who made a difference. So today, as we recall the stories of the fallen, and as we remember the profound sadness of loss, we should focus on how these men and women lived. We should leave here resolved to live lives worthy of their sacrifice, resolved to strengthen our personal commitment to the values for which they stood, and resolved to make a difference in service to our nation and our communities. If we do that, then those who were taken from us prematurely will be able to look down and know that we truly remember them. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of those still serving in uniform, thank you for remembering, and thank you for bringing meaning to the sacrifice of the fallen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Coast Guard Band and the United States Army Chorus will perform Mansions of the Lord.
Sweet.
ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Patrick M. Shanahan, Acting Secretary of Defense.
Mr. Vice President, General Dunford, Senator and Senator Dole, trusted allies, and all Gold Star families, thank you for being here today to help us honor the fallen, those laid to rest here to find sacrifice, service, and purpose. In their days, they guarded our freedoms. In our time, we discharge a sacred obligation to remember them. No words can capture the totality of their courage, patriotism, and love. Some things are beyond words, and their silence speaks for itself. To those they leave behind, beloved spouses, children, family, and friends, we know not a day passes that you don't think of them. Today, millions of your fellow Americans remember with you. Let them celebrate the life of your hero with you. They are here for you, and so are we, your Department of Defense, your family, your friends. I said before, the sacrifice of our honored dead is beyond words. But let those of President Theodore Roosevelt capture just a fraction of their glory. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to introduce the Vice President of the United States, Michael Pence.
Thank you. To Acting Secretary Shanahan, Secretary Wilkie, members of the Cabinet, Secretary Esper, Secretary Wilson, General Dunford, honored guests, especially to the active duty members of our armed forces, our veterans, and most of all, to our Gold Star families. We are honored by your presence. On behalf of a grateful nation, it is my profound privilege to be here on the hallowed ground of Arlington National Cemetery for the 151st occasion where we gather to pay a debt of honor and gratitude to the memory of those who gave their last full measure of devotion. And as that general order in 1868 said first, to renew our pledge to aid and assist those whom they have left among us. As is evident by all your presence here, by gatherings like this all across America, you know. There is a day in November when we remember those who served and came home. But today is the day when all across America we pause to honor and remember those who served our nation but did not come home. It is Memorial Day in America. To all of you here and those looking on from afar, especially to the families of our fallen, we extend our deepest sympathies. And we also bring the deepest respects and gratitude of the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. The President and the First Lady came here to Arlington just this past Thursday. And while his duties have taken him to the other side of the world, I spoke to him just a little while ago. And I know his heart is here with all of you and with families across this nation for whom every day is Memorial Day. The Bible says if you owe debts, pay debts. If honor, then honor. If respect, then respect. And the debt our nation owes to those who rest here among these hallowed fields and in cemeteries, churchyards, and humble plots across the wider world is a debt we can never fully repay. For this is the day that makes possible all other American days. Without it, without the sacrifice we honor at patriots' graves from the four corners of our land and overseas, there would be no other American days. What we celebrate today as Memorial Day began just 3 short years after the end of the Civil War. It was originally established here as Decoration Day, to take place on May 30th, 1868, to honor fallen soldiers by decorating their final resting places with newly bloomed mayflowers and that dear old flag they saved. And that tradition continues. Since that time, here on the hallowed grounds of Arlington and in churchyards, national cemeteries, and town squares across the land, Americans gather to honor the lives and deeds of America's greatest heroes, and to assure their families that we will never forget and we will never fail to honor the service and sacrifice of their loved ones. We're actually joined today by 2 leaders who have quite possibly done more to honor the memory of our fallen and support their families than any other living Americans. For his courageous service in World War II, for all they have both done to preserve the memory of the greatest generation, and for their support of military families, would you join me in thanking Senators Bob Dole and Elizabeth Dole for their countless contributions to the United States of America. From the hour of our nation's birth, our best and bravest have stepped forward to defend freedom. The unbroken cord of military service stretches into the mists of American history. From Bunker Hill to Belleau Wood, from San Juan Hill to Saipan, from the Coral Sea to Kandahar, heroic Americans have answered their nation's call and paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Their duty was to serve. Our duty is to remember. History records that more than 40 million have served in the uniform of the United States, and nearly 1 million Americans have fallen in uniform since our nation's founding. Americans of every race and creed have fought and died for our freedom. But as I can tell from the faces of those gathered here, you know the numbers don't tell the story. They tell nothing of the lives of promise cut short, of dreams unfulfilled, of families shattered. Words fail when heroes fall. So we do well on this day each year just to tell their stories and to let their words and deeds speak for them. David Kerr was born in Louisiana in 1893. He was a student at Columbia University, but he dropped out of college to fight in World War I. He deployed to France, volunteered to participate in an attack on Saint-Mihiel, and 2 months before the guns fell silent at the 11th hour, the 11th day, and the 11th month, Sergeant David Kerr fell. After the war, the French government awarded him the Croix de Guerre with palm for his courageous service. But a day before the attack, Sergeant Kerr sent a letter to his mom. He wrote, and I quote, "Tomorrow the first totally American drive commences, and it gives me inexpressible joy and pride to know that I shall be present to do my share. Should I go under, I want you to know that I went without any terror of death, and that my chief worry is the grief my death will bring to those so dear to me." And then he ended saying, "I feel wonderfully strong to do my share well for my sake. You must try and drown your sorrow in the pride and satisfaction that I died well in so clean a cause as ours." He ended, "God bless and keep you, my dear heart. Be kind to little Elizabeth. I love you so well. David." Today we remember the service and sacrifice of Sergeant David Kerr. William Robinson Evans, Jr. was born in Indiana in 1918. He was an Eagle Scout. After graduating from college in Connecticut, he enlisted in the Navy's Reserve Officer Pilot Program. He earned his wings of gold and was commissioned as an ensign in May of 1941. In September, he was assigned to a torpedo squadron on the USS Hornet. And at 23, he was one of the squadron's youngest pilots. On the 4th of June, 1942, 15 torpedo planes from his squadron went into battle against overwhelming numbers of enemy fighters, and they were all shot down. But their sacrifice and their courage that day helped change the course of world history. Ensign Evans received the Navy Cross posthumously for his heroism during the air battle of Midway. But 2 months before he was lost, he wrote to a friend these words: "Many of my friends are now dead. To a man, each died with a nonchalance that each would have denied was courage. If anything greater good is born of this war, it should not be valued in the colonies we may win or the pages historians will attempt to write, but rather in the youth of our country, who never trained for war, rather almost never believed in war, but who from some hidden source have brought forth gallantry which is homespun, it is so real." And then he said, "I say these things because I knew you liked and understood boys. And I wanted you to know they've not let you down." Today we remember the service and sacrifice of Ensign Bill Evans, Jr. John Floyd Cochran was born in Michigan in 1941. First Lieutenant Cochran served in the 409th Radio Unit in Vietnam. He led a platoon, and a man who served under him would say 4 decades later that he was one great guy. Lieutenant Cochran fell to sniper fire on the 24th of October, 1966, just 6 days before he was scheduled to meet his wife in Hawaii on R&R. In his final letter home, he wrote to his mom and dad these words: "Tonight, I'm awaiting an attack. Yes, that's right. Your only son, who you didn't raise to be stupid, is 11,000 miles away from home, sitting beneath a shaded Coleman lantern on top of a hill, waiting for a visit from our friend Charlie. He later wrote, I know why I'm here and why I couldn't be any other place. He said, I do believe that basic principles are enough for a man to die for. We are here because we actually believe that our country is good enough to fight for and, if necessary, to die for. Today, we remember the service and sacrifice of First Lieutenant John Cochran. 3 men, 3 wars. And as we recall their sacrifices, we cannot help but be inspired by their courage. And make no mistake about it, their example is inspiring a new generation of heroes every day. Paul Kelly was actually the son of a Vietnam fighter pilot. He was commissioned in 1982 as an officer through the University of Dayton's ROTC program, served in leadership positions with the Army National Guard. Colonel Paul Kelly was a man who built up all those who served around him. He was known as a dedicated husband to his wife Maria and a proud father of his 2 sons, John and Paul David Kelly. He was nicknamed the Senator because he was always shaking soldiers' hands, no matter what their rank. He was a helicopter pilot, but he was a man in the stick on 20 January 2007 when he was lost in Iraq. 10 years later, on July 20th, 2017, 10 years after his father died in Iraq, his son Paul David Kelly enlisted in the Virginia National Guard. And Private Paul David Kelly, his brother John, and his wonderful mother Maria are here with us today. You honor us by your presence. Your family's 3 generations of service are an inspiration to us all. These stories of heroes we know from beginning to end. But it's important on this Memorial Day to remember that for some families of our fallen, there is an added burden. The burden of having their loved one resting in a place known but to God. Last year, on this solemn occasion, our President promised that we would never stop searching for the servicemen and women who remain missing from wars and conflicts fought over the past century. And we've never stopped. Last June, at his first historic summit in Singapore, with Chairman Kim Jong-un, President Trump had our missing fallen on his heart. And as he began negotiations for the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, President Donald Trump also secured a promise for the return of the remains of all fallen U.S. service members lost in North Korea. In August of last year, at Hickam Field in Hawaii, it was our honor to be present when 55 flag-draped coffins bearing the remains of Americans who fought in the Korean War returned to American soil. And I must tell you, for this son of a combat veteran of the Korean War, I will never be given a higher honor than to have been present when our boys were finally coming home. Some of the remains have been identified, but more work remains. This is just a beginning, but I can assure you and assure all the families of our missing fallen, we will never rest until every soldier is accounted for and resting on American soil. So to the families of the fallen here and looking on, who sacrificed more than we can comprehend, know that the hearts of every American are with you today. And they'll stay with you every day, as will our prayers. We mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve, but we do not grieve like those who have no hope, because our faith gives us hope, and heroes give us hope. For no greater love has a man than this, that he should lay down his life for his friends. Today, on Memorial Day, we honor Americans who showed no greater love for the American people. We can never repay the debt of gratitude we owe to the men and women who have given all to preserve our freedom. But we can honor them, remember them, cherish their families, and this we will do, not just this day, but every day. And so long as our nation continues to produce men and women of such selfless courage and patriotism, I know that freedom will ring for ourselves and our posterity. Their duty was to serve. Our duty is to remember. This Memorial Day, let every American renew our commitment to do our duty, to never fail to remember what they've done for us, and never fail to honor and cherish the families they've left behind, and never fail to strive each and every day to be worthy of the freedom that they won for us all. May God bless our heroic fallen. May those who mourn our heroes be comforted until He wipes every tear from their eyes. May God bless the men and women of our armed forces. And may God bless America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the playing of taps and the benediction. Also, please remain standing for the singing of Amazing Grace performed by the United States Army Chorus.
Receive the benediction. Go into the world to preserve peace. Remember the wisdom that you have learned and be courageous. Pursue excellence in all things and cling to that which is good. Resist evil always. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Lift up the oppressed. Defend the helpless. Honor God. Fear no man. Above all, love and serve the Lord. Amen.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, my heart has already come. This grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been dead 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've known as days to sing God's praise. Then when we first begun, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. 'Twas blind, but now I
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in place as the official party departs and the colors are retired. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's program and enjoy the rest of your day.
Well,
Goodbye.
not really. Memorial Day festivities for the city with a breakfast with the Gold Star families. And it was really inspirational and my great honor to spend time with the families and to make sure that they understood that the journey they are on, not many have traveled, but the journey is not one that they will be on by themselves. It's important for us not to just treat this as another holiday, but to make sure that we are commemorating the sacrifice of the soldiers who have given the ultimate sacrifice, but also those who are stationed in places all across the world protecting our liberty and freedom. Chicago and Illinois have had a long-standing history of young men and women who have answered the call and joined our military in various ranks. I was also grateful to see at the parade on Saturday so many young people in junior ROTC, at high schools really across the city, seeing a diversity of participation. I think it's important for them to understand that we support them, that we appreciate the sacrifice that they and their families have made. And I want to commend the various battalion leaders and teachers and others who supported and encouraged our young people to participate in junior ROTC. I also want to acknowledge President Tony Preckwinkle, who I know has been a mainstay at these events. And I want to acknowledge former Alderman Bob Fioretti, who I think this used to be your ward. Bob has done yeoman's work in making sure that we never forget the importance of supporting our veterans. One last thing that I want to say on this Memorial Day. We have many people who have given service, have returned to Chicago, but as veterans who are struggling. I want to make sure that the City of Chicago does everything it can to support our veterans, from making sure that they get access to medical care, that they are supported in any mental health needs that they have, and also in housing. We cannot have our veterans out on the street at night. We must do everything that we can to support them with wraparound services, and it begins with making sure that they've got stable housing. And I'm committed to that, and I'll be working with people here to make sure that we live up to our responsibility to our veterans. But thank you once again for being here. Thank you for remembering the importance of the sacrifices that our young men and women have made in answering the call to support our freedom across the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Those who are able, please stand. I would ask the rest of you to please rise. We'll be doing the presentation of the colors, a Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by former Alderman Fioretti, and the Star-Spangled Banner by Sharon Carlson and her niece Olivia Knack. And at this point, as is the tradition over these many years, I call on the high school that Lawrence Pucci went to and the junior ROTC to present the colors.
March time. March. Color guard. Halt. Right. Face. Reset. Arms.
Alderman Fioretti, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As Sharon Carlson and Olivia make their way to the microphones at my right hand, I would comment that this particular event is rife with graduates from the distinguished high school known as Hirsch High School on the south side of Chicago. I am one. Sharon is a classmate, actually, a noted performer throughout the Chicago region. She is a teacher, professor at Columbia in terms of voice and theatrics, and her niece.
Granddaughter.
Granddaughter. We seem to be getting our age things mixed up today. Her granddaughter is a member of the Chicago Children's Choir. Accompanied by Maralgua Darja on the keyboard, our Star Spangled Banner, our national anthem. Host the colors.
Forward. March.
And as the color guard takes its place, as they traditionally do on the steps of the monument, please be seated. Last year, we invited my cousin, Pastor Don Borling, to give the invocation for the first time at this event. We thought he did okay, so we invited him back. And now for the invocation from Orland Park, All Saints Lutheran Church, Pastor Don Borling.
That was actually his 9th choice. John, I'm very proud of you. And to all of you who serve our country, thanks for this incredible gift of freedom you give us every day, just to get up every day. It's incredible. Lord, we call upon you by many names. We come here from so many different traditions. And just today, I've done so many ordinary things. I've made the coffee, checked on my grandkids, came home, go to work, drove here this morning, and then I stopped and I see the flag. The freedom to do ordinary things on ordinary days, every day and every moment. And then I see the tombstones stretching seemingly for miles, and I look in the mirror. And I wonder, what have I done for my country lately? These men and women have given it all, the ultimate sacrifice, that we may drink from the cup of freedom every day. That we may live in a country where dreams and second chances are always on our banquet table. What can we all do? To those spirits and lives we honor today, they challenge us to give it all every day. In the work we do, in the persons we strive to be. So, Lord of all life and religions and races and credos, your Spirit lives forever in those we remember today. Amen. God bless you, John.
And now you see why we're so proud of him, even though he just took my program. I really didn't need it, but it's comforting. Also comforting are the words that empower us all to be here today. And J.R. Davis III is going to remind us about key factors presented in your program, but notions we need to know about Major General John A. Logan, J.R. Davis III.
Thanks, John. And if John was your ninth choice, then we're going to have to talk, because that was pretty good. Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. A lot of familiar faces who have been here with us over the last many years, 25 some years. As we assemble today, it's important that we consider the real genesis of Memorial Day. And a number of folks ahead of me have described it, I think, well. The purpose of Memorial Day should not be forgotten, lest it be contained only by barbecues and a day off. We must not forget the ultimate sacrifice that has been paid by men and women of uniform. 151 years ago, the gentleman who we stand in the shadow of at the top of these steps proclaimed Memorial Day in its form via his General Order Number 2, 151 years ago. That content is in the program you have in front of you, but I will draw your attention singularly to one passage as we remember that we are stewards of the future and commemorating those who have fallen. If other eyes grow dull, and other hands slack, and other hearts cold in the solemn trust, ours shall keep it well as long as the light and warmth of life remain to us. Thank you.
J.R., thanks very much. We've been honored for a number of years to have the presence of senior political leadership with us. None more important over those years than the president of the Cook County Board, my former alderman, a friend for many years, my great honor to introduce President Tony Preckwinkle.
Good morning. I'd like to thank General Borling. I'm grateful to him for his service, in particular for the role that he's always played at this event. We're grateful for his stewardship. My father was a World War II vet. He and his older brother, Dwight, served in the Second World War. And like many of his generation, he never talked about it. Actually, I learned more about his service from my grandmother. Her two sons, her only children, were both at war, and she was very, very anxious and concerned. And although she'd never worked outside the home before, she went to work in a munitions factory so she could contribute to the war effort. And she talked to me a lot about that work in the munitions factory and her worries about her sons and what they were doing in the war. Both of them fortunately came back whole, for which I'm grateful. And of course, many did not. Many did not survive. Many did not come back whole. And I'm grateful today for all of those who have served in our armed forces in the past and who serve today, for their service to our country and for their sacrifice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It may seem a bit strange after all these years, but General Logan is going to receive additional commendation and decoration today. We're pleased to have with us the newly installed Chancellor of the Lincoln Academy of Illinois, an organization gubernatorially selected, which is granted the power to give the highest order of the land of Lincoln, and that is the Order of Lincoln. We have with us today not only Frank, but people who have been chosen as laureates of the Academy. Only about 380 people over the 55 years. In fact, Mr. Clark was a laureate himself before he even joined as a trustee, later a regent, and now Chancellor of the Academy. I'll leave it to the former chairman of and CEO of ComEd, a Vietnam veteran, a son of the South Side, and yes, a Hirsch High School graduate, to tell us the rest. Frank Clark.
General Boylan gave my entire speech. Everything that I was going to say, he said in the introduction. First, I too want to acknowledge our newly elected mayor, Mayor Lightfoot. So pleased that you're here. My long and good friend, the president of Cook County, Tony Pretwinkle, and all the distinguished people. I would like there are a couple of laureates here. We're people who have received the Order of Lincoln. When you're a part of the Lincoln Academy, you get a lot of bling, a lot of gold. I chose not to be so ostentatious as to walk down the street with it, but I don't mind showing it to you. But in any event, there are a couple of the laureates. Could you please stand and be recognized? Thank you, thank you, thank you. And other members of the Lincoln Academy, please stand. Please, Julie, our executive director, Alderman. It's an organization that's sort of a well-kept secret, and in many respects, we meet several times a year. We review candidates to receive the Order of Lincoln. These are Illinoisans who have served their country and their nation, who have done extraordinary things. And we've honored Hillary Clinton, a local person many of you know, Melanie Hopkins, and so many others. To stand here in front of the statue of General Logan is very touching to me and emotional in some sense. And let me tell you why. I perceive myself to be a bit of a historian. And Civil War period is a period that I've studied extensively. All the battles, all of the strategies, the fact that the South had the best generals, fortunately the North had the biggest population, and numbers won over competency in many respects for the Civil War. But standing behind us, General Logan was somewhat of a controversial figure. Some of his views were more consistent with the Southerners than they were with the North. But this man put his country first. He put his belief in the Union first. And he became one of the greatest generals of the Civil War. Not a name that everybody recognizes, but when I get the honor to walk up those steps with a wreath, I'm walking up towards a man who really had beliefs that would be difficult for me to accept today, but he put his country first. Something I believe in very, very strongly. As a Vietnam vet and seeing the horrors that worked on a country and on people, and seeing, as the mayor pointed out, seeing veterans on the street, it breaks my heart. So we need to do a lot to correct the situation. That's a political conversation, and other people more competent should have that. But I am really honored to be here. I'm honored to stand in front of all of you, and I'm honored to stand in front of General Logan's statue for what he did. When I look out my window at night, I forget the name of the building that shows the lights that says "Honor our fallen," and I see that every night. I've seen that every night during the Memorial Day weekend, and to know that this is a gentleman who started, I think they called it Decorations Day, and encouraged families to honor the fallen. 151 years later, we now call it Memorial Day, another legacy of truly a great man. So with those words, I say thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and remember the Lincoln Academy. You're going to hear a lot more about us. Thank you so much.